The courtroom fell into a deafening silence as the gavel slammed down, echoing through the grand chamber. Everyone's eyes locked onto the defendant, a stoic woman named Elena Voss, her face unreadable, but her eyes betraying a flicker of fear. The judge declared, "The court will now hear the confession that changes everything." Whispers rippled among the spectators. What truth was about to shatter this case? Elena's lawyer, Michael Hart, clenched his jaw, steeling himself for the battle ahead. The prosecutor's smirk faded as the room braced for the unexpected. Outside, rain streaked down the courthouse windows, mirroring the storm inside. This was no ordinary trial. It was a battlefield of secrets and lies. Elena's voice, soft but unwavering, finally broke the silence. "I wasn't silent because I was guilty. I was silent because I was protecting someone." Elena's voice carried a fragile strength as she revealed, "I have kept a secret that could free or destroy us all." The courtroom leaned in. The prosecutor's eyes flashed with disbelief as the defense lawyer urged for calm. Outside, memories flashed through Elena's mind, her brother's desperate pleas, the fear that had silenced her for months. "I did not stay silent out of guilt, but out of love," she said quietly. The judge nodded, allowing the moment to settle like a storm ready to break. The air was thick with anticipation, each person wondering what shadowy truth was about to surface. The prosecutor rose abruptly, voice sharp. "Your Honor, this revelation changes the entire scope of the case. We demand immediate access to this secret." Michael Hart countered calmly, "Justice must not be rushed by fear. The truth deserves careful uncovering." Elena's eyes darted to the gallery, where an unfamiliar man sat silently, watching. The judge's gaze flickered to the stranger, sensing undercurrents beyond the spoken words. The courtroom became a chessboard, each player calculating their next move, stakes higher than ever. Elena's secret was not just hers to bear. Michael whispered to her, "If what you say is true, it implicates someone very close." Her hands trembled slightly. "I'm ready, but this will change everything, for better or worse." The courtroom clock ticked loudly, the sound echoing like a countdown. Outside, thunder rumbled ominously, a natural omen of the chaos to come. The judge ordered a short recess. The tension temporarily diffused, but the air still crackling with unresolved questions. Everyone left the room feeling the weight of an unseen truth looming large. The courtroom emptied slowly, as murmurs filled the hallways. Elena stood alone by the rain-speckled window, gazing out at the city drenched in twilight. Michael approached quietly, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Whatever happens, we face it together," he said firmly. She nodded, a fragile hope flickering in her eyes. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. A reminder that outside this courtroom, justice was still a battle far from won. The first act closed with a heavy breath, the silent defendant's story just beginning to unfold. As the courtroom recessed, Elena and Michael retreated to a small, dimly lit conference room adjacent to the main hall. The walls seemed to close in, heavy with unspoken fears. Michael leaned forward, voice low but urgent. "Elena, who exactly are you protecting?" She swallowed hard, the weight of the secret nearly crushing her. "It's my brother Daniel. He's caught in something far darker than anyone knows." Michael's eyes sharpened with concern. Outside, distant thunder rolled, echoing the turmoil brewing inside. Elena's confession was no longer just a shield. It was a key to unraveling a web of corruption and danger that extended beyond the courtroom walls. Michael pulled out a folder thick with documents, photos, and notes. "These are some of the things I've uncovered about Daniel's situation. Look at this." Elena's eyes scanned the evidence: bank transfers, shadowy figures, threatening letters. "He's been under surveillance," Michael said quietly. "Someone wants him silenced." Elena clenched her jaw, a mixture of fear and determination crossing her face. "Then we have no time to waste. The truth must come out, but carefully. One wrong move and everything collapses." Their quiet conversation was a stark contrast to the chaos looming just beyond the courthouse doors. Back in the courtroom, the atmosphere was thick with speculation as the judge called the proceedings back to order. The mysterious man from the audience, identified as a private investigator named Simon Kane, stepped forward, requesting to speak. "Your Honor," Simon said firmly, "I have information that may shed light on the defendant's silence." Murmurs erupted among the spectators. Elena's heart pounded, every eye now watched her like a hawk. The judge gave Simon permission to continue, signaling a pivotal turn. This was more than a legal battle. It was a clash of hidden agendas and veiled threats. Simon began his testimony, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "I've been tracking a covert surveillance operation aimed at Daniel Voss, the defendant's brother. The stakes are high, involving illegal money laundering and corrupt officials." The courtroom shifted. The prosecutor frowned deeply. Michael whispered to Elena, "This confirms what we feared. The truth is tangled in dangerous territory." Elena's eyes welled with tears as she whispered, "It's worse than I thought." Outside, a storm intensified, thunder crashing as if echoing the revelation. Every word Simon spoke tightened the noose around those who wanted the secret buried. The judge called for a brief recess as the courtroom buzzed with shock. Elena sat quietly, the weight of her brother's plight settling deep. Michael approached. "Elena, we need to decide our next steps carefully. This testimony changes the game but paints a target on Daniel's back." Elena nodded slowly, a resolute fire igniting within. "Then we fight, no matter the cost." The judge's gavel fell again, signaling the end of the act, but the beginning of a much darker battle. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating a city poised on the edge of revelation and ruin. The courtroom reconvened with an air of heightened tension. Elena's eyes scanned the room, landing briefly on Daniel's empty seat in the gallery, a stark reminder of what was at stake. The prosecutor, now visibly unsettled, introduced new evidence, a secret ledger allegedly linking Daniel to illicit transactions. "This ledger is proof of guilt," the prosecutor declared. Michael objected swiftly. "Your Honor, the ledger's authenticity is questionable. We demand forensic verification." The judge nodded, acknowledging the gravity of the request. The courtroom held its breath. The ledger could either condemn or exonerate. Elena's resolve hardened. Truth and deception now danced on a razor's edge. Outside the courtroom, rain had resumed, tapping rhythmically on the courthouse steps. Michael and Elena stepped into a small alcove, the weight of the ledger's implications sinking in. "If the ledger is real, Daniel is deeper in trouble than we imagined," Michael said quietly. Elena clenched her fists. "But if it's forged, someone's trying to frame him." Her voice was fierce but laced with uncertainty. Michael nodded. "We need an expert, someone who can tell truth from forgery." Their eyes met in shared determination, united against the invisible forces threatening to unravel them. Back inside, the judge called an expert witness, Clara Jensen, a forensic document analyst. Clara approached the bench with quiet confidence, early 40s, Caucasian woman, glasses perched on her nose, dressed in professional attire. She laid out her tools carefully and explained, "I will examine the ledger's ink, paper, and handwriting to determine its authenticity." The courtroom watched, rapt. Elena felt her heart thump loudly as Clara began her meticulous analysis, every moment stretching like an eternity. This was the truth's crucible, where hope and despair clashed. After what felt like hours, Clara delivered her verdict. "The ledger is authentic, but there are subtle alterations in the entries dated last month." The prosecutor's confident smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of doubt. Michael seized the moment. "Your Honor, this suggests deliberate tampering, an attempt to frame Daniel at the 11th hour." Elena's breath caught. The courtroom buzzed with a mix of shock and intrigue. The judge called for a brief recess to allow counsel to review the findings. Outside, clouds gathered ominously, as if nature itself echoed the mounting storm within the case. In the quiet of the hallway, Elena's world felt like it was tilting. Michael reassured her, "We've found a crack in their case. That alteration is our opening." Elena's eyes glistened with a mixture of relief and renewed strength. "This isn't just about my brother anymore," she whispered. "It's about exposing everyone who's been hiding behind lies." Michael nodded gravely. The rain outside began to subside, casting a fragile light over the courthouse steps. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, hope flickered with a stubborn glow, pushing back the shadows. The courtroom buzzed with renewed energy as the judge called the session back to order. Michael stood, addressing the jury with calm intensity. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are now uncovering a web of deception that goes far beyond my client. This ledger is not just a piece of evidence. It's a weapon used to silence the truth." Elena sat silently, her gaze fixed on the prosecutor, who shifted uncomfortably. The judge reminded all that the truth must emerge clearly and fairly. Outside, sunlight broke through the storm clouds, casting sharp shadows inside. Every eye in the courtroom was locked on the unfolding drama, the stakes climbing higher with each word. A surprise witness took the stand, a whistleblower from within the corrupt network, a woman named Lila Brooks. Her voice trembled but carried undeniable conviction as she recounted hidden meetings and hush money exchanged. "I saw documents altered, evidence destroyed," Lila said, glancing nervously at the prosecutor. The courtroom gasped. Elena's heart raced. Lila's testimony was the crack in the fortress of lies. Michael nodded slightly, signaling the defense's momentum. "Malji." The judge cautioned all to keep order, but tension was now palpable, every secret inching toward exposure. The prosecutor rose, voice sharp and urgent, trying to discredit Lila's claims. "Miss Brooks has a vested interest in twisting facts. Her testimony is unreliable." Michael responded with quiet strength. "The truth cannot be silenced by threats or smears." Elena watched as the battle of words surged like a storm, each side wielding truth and deception as weapons. The judge's gavel slammed down, calling for order as voices rose. Outside, thunder rolled once more, echoing the courtroom's chaos. Elena's secret was no longer hers alone. It was a spark igniting a powder keg. As the day wore on, the courtroom grew heavy with exhaustion and suspense. Michael leaned toward Elena quietly. "Prepare yourself. There will be more revelations, and some may cut deeper than you expect." Elena swallowed, steeling her nerves. The judge called for testimony from a forensic accountant, who detailed suspicious financial flows linking high-ranking officials to the shadowy network surrounding Daniel. The courtroom murmured in disbelief. Elena felt a mix of vindication and dread. The battle for justice was becoming a war, with every secret pulled into the unforgiving light. As the day ended, the judge reminded all present of the weight their decisions carried. Elena sat quietly, the gravity of the unfolding scandal settling like a stone in her chest. Michael promised, "We will fight this. Every lie, every betrayal." Outside the courthouse, the storm had passed, leaving behind a crisp, cool night. Elena's reflection shimmered in the glass, eyes tired but resolute. This was no longer just a trial, it was a reckoning. The silent defendant was beginning to speak, and those who hid in shadows trembled. The morning light crept into the courtroom, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Elena sat quietly, mentally preparing for the day's intense cross-examinations. Michael approached her, voice steady but serious. "This is where we break their defenses." The prosecutor smirked across the room, confident but wary. The judge called the next witness, a high-ranking official whose testimony could either unravel or reinforce the tangled web of corruption. Elena's pulse quickened. Every word spoken today could tip the scales of justice. The courtroom fell silent, the weight of the moment palpable. The official, a stern man named Gregory Shaw, took the stand with an air of authority. His voice was measured but firm as he denied any wrongdoing. "I have no knowledge of illicit activities connected to Mr. Voss or his family," he asserted. Michael's piercing gaze never wavered. "Mr. Shaw, can you explain these transactions?" he asked, sliding documents across the table. Shaw's facade cracked momentarily, but he recovered quickly, deflecting with vague answers. Elena watched closely, sensing the cracks beneath the surface. The battle of truths had entered a dangerous gray zone where facts blurred with lies. The courtroom erupted briefly as a surprise interruption halted proceedings. A phone call delivered urgent news to Michael. He stepped aside, whispering to Elena, "Daniel has been taken into custody. This changes everything." Elena's breath caught in her throat, the fight suddenly becoming painfully personal. The judge called for a recess as whispered conversations swirled around. Outside the courtroom, Elena stared into the gray sky, fighting to steady her racing heart. The battle for justice was no longer just legal. It was a race against time to save her brother. During the recess, Elena met Michael in a quiet hallway. "They're holding Daniel without charges, hoping to break him," Michael said grimly. Elena's voice trembled, but her eyes burned with defiance. "We'll fight this. We must." Michael nodded, pulling out a small recorder. "This could be our leverage, evidence of intimidation." Elena took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the struggle deepen. The courthouse seemed colder, shadows lengthening as uncertainty tightened its grip. The war for truth was intensifying, and retreat was not an option. As the session resumed, Michael presented the new evidence, a covert recording revealing threats against Daniel. The courtroom gasped as the audio played, voices cold and menacing. Elena's eyes glistened with a mix of pain and determination. The prosecutor faltered, struggling to maintain control. The judge leaned forward, signaling the case was entering its most critical phase. Elena's silent fight had become a roar demanding justice. The courtroom was no longer just a place of law. It was a battlefield for truth, redemption, and survival. The atmosphere in the courtroom was electric as Michael called forward an unexpected witness, a young woman named Sarah Collins, a junior staffer within the prosecutor's office. Nervous but resolute, Sarah took her oath, eyes flickering with fear and courage. She revealed in a hushed voice, "I witnessed direct interference in the evidence collection process. Reports were altered, and witnesses were coached to skew their testimonies." Her admission caused a ripple of shock throughout the courtroom. The prosecutor's confident facade cracked, his jaw tightening in anger and disbelief. Elena felt a surge of hope pulse through her veins. The walls of deception that had held her brother captive were beginning to crumble. The judge motioned for calm, but the tension was undeniable. This was more than a trial. It was an exposure of systemic rot festering beneath the surface of justice. Michael leaned in, pressing Sarah gently but firmly. "Sarah, please tell the court exactly what you saw." She swallowed, her voice steady despite the gravity. "I saw documents being deliberately altered to implicate Daniel Voss. I overheard instructions to change testimony to favor the prosecution's narrative. This wasn't justice. It was a coordinated effort to control the outcome." The courtroom erupted in whispers, the weight of her revelations sinking deep into every listener's consciousness. The prosecutor's lips pressed into a thin line, clearly rattled by the bombshell. Elena clenched her fists under the table, the enormity of Sarah's words hitting her like a tidal wave. This trial was not merely about guilt or innocence anymore. It was a reckoning of the entire corrupt machinery that had worked to silence the truth for too long. Outside, the sun broke through the lingering clouds, casting a tentative glow of hope across the courthouse steps. The prosecutor, now visibly unsettled, rose sharply to challenge the testimony. "Nens Jensen," he called out, addressing the forensic analyst, "can you reaffirm the legitimacy of the evidence we have presented so far?" Clara Jensen adjusted her glasses, her expression unwavering as she replied, "The core evidence is authentic, yes, but there are clear signs of tampering, alterations in ledger entries and inconsistencies in timestamps that cannot be ignored." The courtroom absorbed the weight of her words. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Elena exchanged a meaningful glance with Michael. They knew this was the turning point. The courtroom felt like a powder keg, the truth and deception locked in a high-stakes duel with no clear victor yet. The judge rapped the gavel, calling for order as the tension surged, everyone aware that the case was now on a knife's edge. The judge's voice cut through the thick silence, measured and grave. "This court recognizes the immense complexity of the evidence and the serious implications for all involved. Additional time will be granted to thoroughly examine the newly presented facts." Elena exhaled a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding, relief mixed with lingering anxiety. Michael placed a reassuring hand on her arm, his eyes conveying steadfast support. Outside, the city hummed with whispered rumors and flashing headlines, stories of corruption, cover-ups, and a battle for justice now reaching far beyond the courtroom walls. Elena realized this fight had transformed. It was no longer about just clearing her brother's name. It had become a beacon of hope for exposing a fractured system built on silence and lies. The heavy courtroom doors closed briefly, symbolically sealing the moment of pause before the next surge. In the quiet moments after the session, Elena found herself standing alone by a towering courthouse window. The city skyline stretched beyond, glowing softly in the dusky twilight. Michael appeared beside her, voice low, but filled with unwavering conviction. "No matter what comes next, Elena, you've sparked a fight that will not be forgotten." She met his gaze, tears shimmering but determination burning bright. "I'm ready for whatever lies ahead. We've come too far to back down now." The gentle evening breeze rustled the leaves outside, carrying whispers of change and resilience. The silent defendant had finally found her voice, a fierce roar demanding justice, and her story was far from over. The courtroom's shadows may have lengthened, but the fire within her soul blazed with unyielding strength. The courtroom was a pressure cooker of tension and anticipation, every seat filled, every gaze locked on Elena as she rose for her closing statement. Her voice was steady, yet imbued with raw emotion, cutting through the silence like a beacon. This trial transcends simple verdicts. It embodies the fight for truth buried beneath layers of silence, fear, and deceit. We ask you, the jury, to see beyond the facade, to grasp the human cost of hiding behind lies. She let her words hang in the air, scanning the jury's faces, some skeptical, others visibly moved. Michael watched with quiet pride, knowing this moment could change everything. The judge's eyes were heavy with the day's weight, while outside, the city seemed to hold its breath, waiting for justice to speak. Elena's statement was not just words. It was a call to conscience. The prosecutor stood to deliver his final rebuttal, voice crisp and deliberate, attempting to redirect the jury's focus toward cold logic. While the defendant's story appeals to our emotions, the foundation of justice is evidence, not sentiment. We urge you to weigh facts dispassionately and deliver a verdict based solely on truth, not sympathy. His gaze swept the room, challenging the jurors' resolve. The jury members exchanged subtle, uncertain glances, their burden clear. Elena's heartbeat thundered as she sat, every second a test of patience and hope. The judge's voice cut through the tension. The court is now in recess for jury deliberations. The spectators filed out, whispers weaving through the corridors. Outside, dark clouds rolled in ominously, mirroring the lingering uncertainty. Justice was imminent, but its shape remained unknown. Hours later, the courtroom doors opened again, as the jury filed back in, faces carefully composed but unreadable. Elena's breath caught as the judge called the room to order with a firm tone. She gripped Michael's hand tightly, a silent plea for strength. The foreperson rose, voice steady but heavy with consequence. "We find the defendant not guilty." A hush fell, broken by quiet gasps and murmurs, some weeping softly. Elena's relief washed over her in waves, exhaustion and emotion intertwining. Yet beneath the triumph lay the bitter recognition of wounds inflicted and scars that time alone might not heal. This verdict marked an end but also a beginning. A fragile dawn after a long, dark night of betrayal and silence. The silent defendant's voice had finally shattered the walls of secrecy. The judge addressed the courtroom with measured solemnity. Though this verdict brings closure, it also illuminates the fissures within our system. Fissures we must confront. Let today be a reminder that justice requires vigilance, courage, and the willingness to listen to those silenced by fear. Elena rose, her voice steady, ringing with quiet power. This trial was never mine alone. It is the story of every silenced voice, every truth suppressed in shadows. May it inspire courage in those still waiting to speak. Her gaze swept the room, meeting eyes filled with empathy and resolve. Outside, sunlight pierced parting clouds, casting the courthouse in a hopeful glow. The story's last page was written not in silence, but in a promise, of voices raised, of justice pursued, of change ignited. As the last spectators trickled out, Elena lingered by the towering courthouse doors, bathed in the soft gold of late afternoon. Michael's voice broke the silence gently. "What now?" She turned, eyes bright with the weight of everything endured and the horizon ahead. "Now," she said, voice steady and unwavering, "we carry this fight beyond these walls. Silence is a prison, truth is liberation." The distant city hummed quietly, relentless and full of possibility. In that charged stillness, her words hung in the air. The truth is never silent. It waits only for the courage to speak. With a purposeful step, she moved forward into the light, the story ending not with finality, but with a new beginning. A fragile, fierce promise of justice yet to come.